If you end up running out of money, then you run into the other possibility of becoming a burden to the people you love.
Retirement is supposed to be the reward for decades of hard work. But what happens when the retirement you dreamed about starts costing more than you can afford? Today, we're talking about wants versus needs in retirement, the trade offs that can help your money last, and how to course correct if you've already overspent in your early retirement years. Hello, and welcome to Money on Your Mind from Edelman Financial Engines. I'm Michael Liersch, a behavioral scientist, financial planner, and your chief planning officer at EFE. Thanks for joining us for a conversation about how people are feeling about money, what they're wrestling with, and how financial planning can help you straighten things out. Today, we're talking with Bruce Smith, an EFE financial planner. Bruce and I have spent actually a couple meals together in his hometown of, well, actually, I don't know, Bruce, is it Seattle or Bellevue is your hometown here?
Seattle.
Oh,
Well,
Seattle.
yes, yeah, Seattle area, yes.
Okay. I know it's important because I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and those things matter. So,
Yes.
Bruce, in any case, welcome to Money on Your Mind. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. Glad to
So,
be here.
so Bruce, our listeners, our viewers, to the point on where you're from, all the things, they'd like to know a little bit about you, to get to know you, your personal and professional journey to where you're at today, and then a bit about your passion for helping out clients. So can you share that with us?
Sure. I've spent the last 30 plus years in the financial services industry here in the Pacific Northwest. Uh, I'm a Boeing baby. My dad is a retired Boeing engineer, so I deal with a lot of Boeing employees.
So Bruce, Boeing, it's interesting you bring that up. You have a family history, of Boeing being a big part of your life. You serve a lot of Boeing employees and retired employees from Boeing. Tell us a bit about what that company means to you. It's an amazing institution.
Yeah, again, growing up as a Boeing baby, the company is near and dear to my heart because it helped grow me into the person that I am, sorry. Um, Again, my dad was a lifelong Boeing employee. The company, what it means to the Seattle area, the city grew up around Boeing. Boeing is what brought people here to the Seattle area. So it's a integral part of this economy and this area. Boeing touches so many lives in the Puget Sound region. Even if you don't work directly with them, they still touch a number of people here in the area.
And outside, all around the world.
Yes.
I've sat on, a lot of those airplanes flying around the world. So I think it's really important for our listeners, our viewers to understand, the kind of gravity of being an engineer, an employee at Boeing. And I think it's really, really wonderful that you shared that with us, what that meant to you. So thank you. With that in mind, it does become difficult when someone's worked all their lives, worked very hard at any company, let alone a company like Boeing, and they hit this moment where they thought they were going to be able to retire, and they're in retirement, and they've unintentionally overspent, which is actually more common than people think.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how normal that is and why, Bruce, to kind of kick off this conversation?
Yeah, I agree with your statement there. It is more normal than people realize. I think where it comes from is people tend to have a bucket list of things that they want to do in retirement. And when they retire, hey, let's get these things done while we're still active. And I support that. But where I think the disconnect comes into play is not understanding that type of spending on the front end of your retirement can impact the back end, and it lends itself to making some difficult decisions. When I talk to the people that I work with about this kind of stuff, I don't tell them you can't do that. We just may need to do it in a different manner. Maybe we don't do 3 trips a year. Maybe it's one trip and maybe a couple of smaller things. Maybe we delay certain things, but it all comes back to planning it out. Where the misstep happens in every one of those situations is the lack of planning for that. And if you come in, you sit down and you create that plan, then you have an idea what to expect and what you should be doing and not doing with your retirement dollars.
So, what do you think prevents the planning at such a critical point in people's financial lives when they're transitioning from, you know, all the money they've worked hard for, earned, accumulated, saved, invested, organized, now they're in retirement and they're spending, they're no
Mhm.
longer earning, and they don't have a plan around it. What's caused that circumstance in your mind?
In my mind, what's caused that is, I think, just a lack of access to financial planning experts. For the most part of people's careers, they've kind of been left out there by themselves. They were given all the materials for their 401k, let's say, but really no guidance on how to interpret the information and what's right for them. So for so long, they've done it themselves. And when you've accumulated a decent amount of wealth by doing it yourself, you get that false sense that you don't need any help until, unfortunately, for some people, until it's too late.
So when someone comes to you or you're just talking with someone, in your life and you recognize that they haven't done that planning and they've probably overspent, what gives you that aha moment? And then how do you relay that aha moment to them? Or do they come to you knowing that's happened first? Or is it all of the above?
It's all of the above, but mostly people come in that scenario where they have an idea that they've overspent. And for a lot of them, they've kind of take the ostrich approach, keeping their heads buried in the sand and try to ignore it as long as possible until it gets to a point where they can't ignore it anymore.
And what becomes that they can't ignore it? What happens? They can see the money disappearing too quickly, or there is a big major health event or a purchase event that scared them. Like what causes that?
Uh, all of the above. In some situations, it's been a major health scare that caused it, but more often, I see it just as people who are spending more than they really should be on the front end of their retirement, on things, on more wants and not the needs.
Okay, so then how do they recognize then what a want versus a need is? Because if that's the core issue, that sounds like where you start. So what does that
Yes.
process look like?
Well, it's about sitting down and talking. Here's the trajectory you're going on if you continue down this road, and you're going to have to make some difficult choices. What's most important to you? I can't tell you that. You tell me what's most important to you, and let's build that into the plan. And if it means that we have to lay some of the other things, then that's what we'll have to do. But it's about having that honest conversation, and some of them are not comfortable conversations to have, but they're necessary to have.
So, Bruce, on that topic, our listeners and our viewers like to hear like a real story that depicts what you're describing. Maybe find a story in your mind where you can share it with our viewers and listeners that they could relate to it, and where you got them on the other side. Can you share that process with us?
Sure. I met with a couple who have been retired. Not sure how much they started with their retirement, but the embarrassment and the fear in their voices is really what stuck with me. Were self-directed. They felt they did a good job of saving money and that they could do it on their own. They didn't need financial planning. And they had the idea of doing all the things that they wanted to do on the front end of their retirement while they're still healthy and relatively young. They
That
bought
seems
a
reasonable, right? I mean, that sounds
Yeah,
fun and
yeah.
exciting. Yeah. Okay.
They bought a second home. They did more of a snowbirding type of thing,
Okay.
and now they're carrying two mortgages, and they're at the point where they have spent down their retirement savings. My conversation with them was, unfortunately, you're gonna have to make a decision to uh, sell one of the properties. For them, selling one of the properties, for the most part, would solve their issues. It would eliminate their debt. It would increase their net income because they wouldn't have the outflows.
And then reduce
And
the
now,
expenses of the property altogether, right?
yes,
Okay.
yes, and it's one of those things where they are house rich and cash poor,
Yeah.
in a sense, and they
Yeah.
need to get that flipped around.
You know, it's really interesting you share that story, Bruce, and it is really, frankly, the perfect story. So, how do you help resolve these differences so you can get on the other side of this planning event?
Well, my role when it comes to that is really just to lay out what the facts are.
Okay.
I can't make the decision for them. I can't tell them what's right for them. Here are your choices, and by making one of these decisions, here's the consequence of that decision. It may not necessarily be the place that you want to live in, but you have a place to live. And if selling in this instance, if it's selling a property or doing something else to change your situation to make it better, then there you go. That's the decision. But it starts by laying out what your options are.
Is then arguments and disagreement in front of you or behind the scenes? I just want to normalize things. Is that normal, or does everyone kind of hold hands around the desired outcome and, rationally agree on the path, even if it's not the one spouse or the other spouse wants to take? Like, how does that all go down, Bruce?
In the situations where there's a disagreement, sometimes there can be some arguments or some harsh words. I stay neutral. It's not my decision to make for them. My job is to lay out what the options are, at least how I see what the options are, and try to push them towards the middle that, hey, there is a outcome here that can be achieved that can ultimately satisfy both of you, not maybe to the extent that you want it to, but ultimately the grand plan is to have a successful retirement, which by my definition is having enough money to live on for the rest of your life. Now, if we can keep that in mind, then the rest of it we can make decisions around that, as long as we keep our true north of achieving that successful retirement. There's options to be made,
On
or
the other
there's
side.
decisions to be made, and ways that we can make that achieve that goal.
And so when you think of what's most important, how is that determined? I think sometimes wants can creep in as perceived needs when they're really wants, like giving money for grandchildren's education or something. That might
Yeah.
feel like a need because you committed to it. But at the end of the day, if it's going to make you run out of money, that's really a want. Does that make sense, Bruce? Like, how do you
Yes.
just give us a framework to think about that?
Well, again, when I'm sitting down doing the financial plan, I'm really reinforcing, and let's take that example, college planning for a grandchild. If they want to perceive that as a need, if it really is a need, then what it will possibly mean is that you have to take away from something else, and getting them back into that mind frame of where should my priorities lie. I know you want to do these things, and they're great things to do, but we can't necessarily be everything to everybody. And you must be true to yourself first. You got to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. It's just reinforcing that strategy and that mindset of, hey, let's take care of you. Let's identify what's most important for your daily living, and then with the extra, here's what else we could be doing. But ultimately, the first priority is making sure you retire successfully. You're not going to be any good to anybody if you end up running out of money. Then you run into the other possibility of becoming a burden to the people you love, and that's a worse outcome than maybe not being able to put into a college fund like you want to. It's just keeping them focused on what the ultimate goal is.
That's an interesting reframe, because if you reframe it as, if you did this thing and you ran out of money, would that person, that institution wanted you to have done that for them?
Yes.
And I love that frame, Bruce, because a grandchild, would they have wanted you to pay for their education if ultimately they and or their parents are going to have to take care of you for the next 10, 20 years in your financial life? So I'm going to ask you two quick questions here.
Okay.
The first one that we always close with, the first one is, what mistake are you seeing clients make today? Like, what's the biggest mistake you see them making right now?
Uh, what I'm seeing with the people that I've sat down with, the biggest mistake is either they're being way too aggressive or way too conservative with their retirement dollars,
Oh, wow.
mostly
Okay.
being too aggressive.
Okay.
Um, the analogy I like to use is, when you're in your 20s or in your 30s, I use road trips as an example. We're 400 miles away from your destination. It makes sense to get on the freeway and drive 70 miles an hour because we have so much road to make up. But when you get 2 blocks away, that's no longer an appropriate strategy. Now we're shooting for 25 miles an hour. And that concept of taking just the enough risk to get you to where you need to get to your successful retirement.
The least amount of risk to get to the desired outcome. Bruce, is like music to my ears. That's really, really great advice, and a really important mistake people are making, either going too slow, to your point, or going too fast. Take the least amount of risk to get to the destination.
Yeah.
Really, really great. So the second question is, what's one thing that you think everyone should be doing right now when it comes to their financial life?
Sit down with a financial planner and understand what your goals and your objectives are, what your time frames are, and what it will take to achieve them.
Bruce, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. It's been really fun on this podcast with you. Any last words before we part ways today?
Uh, I've enjoyed my time here. Thanks for having me, and let's do it again sometime.
Sounds great to me. So that's everything we have for today. This has been Money on Your Mind. A big thanks to financial planner Bruce Smith for joining me. And we'll be back next Wednesday with a new episode. Subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube so you don't miss it. I'm Michael Liersch from Edelman Financial Engines. Talk to you next time.